Now, I could have called this video from one extreme to another, because if you watched last week's video, I tested the Camlan 50mm f1.1 lens. So I've gone from that really very fast lens f1.1 down to the SLR Magic Pinhole, which has an f-stop of 128. So it has gone from one extreme to the other. Hello again, and this time, in case you hadn't worked it out from the thumbnail, we are going to be talking about pinhole photography on Micro Four Thirds cameras. Now, I've been in photography for very many years, too many, a lot of you might say. I've never actually had a go at pinhole photography before now. And a couple of weeks ago I thought, what the heck, let's look into it a bit and have a go. Now, pinhole photography has been around since probably the days of the ancient Greeks, camera obscura, all that sort of thing. And it's very possible to make your own pinhole camera using either printing papers or film, depending on what your exposure time you're prepared to put up with. But I decided to have a look and see what I could do using my Micro Four Thirds bodies with a pinhole of some description. So first port of call was the internet, and I ordered a couple of pairs of rear lens caps and body caps. Simple as that, really. And I got two pairs, and I've drilled a hole in the front of both of the body caps in preparation for the actual pinhole. Now, my initial theory was to simply order a couple of professionally made pinholes, and I opted for two from a company based in France called Reality So Subtle. And because I hadn't done very much research, I just plumped for a couple. So I ordered a 1mm diameter pinhole and a 0.5mm diameter pinhole. And these are laser cut, professionally done laser cut pinholes in a tiny circular piece of brass, which is then mounted onto a sort of flexible substrata, and on one side the brass has been surrounded by a matte black piece of, looks like felt almost, but it's very thin, and I think that's been put on there to reduce internal reflections and refraction inside the camera body. So 1mm and 0.5mm pinholes, and once they arrived I mounted them on the inside of the body cap and took the camera out to my local park, and I'll show you some of the results right now, and then we'll come back after you've seen those. Well, don't quite know where to start. I took some images of these buttercups in the meadow grass in my local park, and the biggest issue I had, I did try both of the two pinholes I'd purchased, the 1mm and the 0.5mm, and it was a real struggle to get the exposure down to a realistic level, to be honest with you. In fact, even though this was a very bright sunny day, I was still getting exposures round about 1/4 of a second, something like that, at ISO 200, and straight away I was thinking, oh goodness me, perhaps I've made a big mistake with the size of the pinholes that I've ordered. And you can see by looking at this image of the buttercups just exactly how blurred it is, and I had to bring the exposure right down in affinity after I'd taken it. Now you can play around with contrast, bring up the vibrancy, dial in a bit of clarity, but at the end of the day it was still to my eyes anyway, an awful lot more blurred overall than I was expecting it to be. Maybe that's because it's micro four thirds, I thought, I don't know. And one thing that became apparent, this image that I've taken, which is by what used to be a boathouse on the lake in my local park, what became instantly apparent is that it shows up marks on the sensor very easily, and obviously for that reason I've highlighted it in this particular image, so it was a case of cleaning off the sensor before I did any more photography with it. I did manage, once the sun had gone in, to get the exposure down to around about a second. The wind had picked up, so this one involves a lot more movement in those buttercups. But it just wasn't, it didn't feel right, didn't look right. I was really scratching my head, to be perfectly honest with you. And that's when I decided to go down the route of a homemade pinhole. Well, you probably gathered, I wasn't very happy with the results. When you look online and see some of the experts in pinhole photography, the results they can get are quite frankly amazing. I was very disappointed. It was giving me a very narrow field of view, and okay, pinhole photography isn't about sharpness, but the fuzziness of the images was unacceptable even to me with pinhole photography. So I had a go at making my own pinhole in one of the body caps, and it's still in place on this one, and all it is a piece of kitchen foil. It's held in place with a piece of blue tack, and all I did was to find the finest needle that I could and make the smallest possible hole that I could in that piece of tin foil, lined it up in the middle of the opening of the lens cap, body cap, sorry, and took it out again. There's a few more images for you to have a look at, and I'll talk you through the results with this. So these next few images were taken with the homemade pinhole, where the hole is made through the silver foil, and it is a lot better. The smaller hole has given me a more crisp image. I'm not going to say sharp, but much more along the lines of what I was hoping to get. Now, this is the boathouse still in Prince's Park, and you may not be able to appreciate it, but it equates to roughly the same as a standard focal length lens. And I was hoping for and maybe expecting a wider field of view. But anyway, this was a relatively successful image given what I was trying to use at the time. Now, the next shot, taken from the same standpoint, but looking down towards the actual water level within the old boathouse. Again, you know, it's okay, it's nothing to shout about, but there is detail in there hidden within the fuzziness, if you like, within the unsharp area of the overall image. And of course, with pinhole photography, you've got limitless depth of field. There are no optics, so there's no distortion, and there are a couple of things you need to look out for, and I'm going to come on to them right now. This used to be one of my favourite views in Liverpool before they built some of the new office blocks down on the pier head. This is one of the old dockyard buildings, and it is literally just one gable end wall that is left standing. Now, looking at it as you view it on the screen probably looks fine, but if I magnify the top left corner of it, you can see a couple of worrying things. First of all is a pattern of dots all over the image. They are very visible in the blue skies, and then towards the bottom left corner of this image you can see that sort of grid pattern of lines. And when I initially saw this I thought, oh my goodness, what's gone on with the sensor? Have I damaged it in some way? And then as I look at it and think about these things, I've been looking at the actual way that I've gone about making this silver foil pinhole, and essentially what it's doing, and I've got a macro shot here of what I think has happened. The light is bouncing back off this silver foil and it's making those dot patterns all over the image, and that cross-hatched pattern that you can see there, believe it or not, is actually where I've pressed my finger onto the silver foil. So it's bringing out the detail in the silver foil itself, and that's what's being rendered on the image. Once I'd worked that out, great relief, I have to say, but completely unusable. So if I were to continue using this, I'd really have to tidy it all up, and a coat of black paint on the silver foil would be a definite requirement. And this shot is taken down in the Liverpool 1 shopping area, and it's an elevated walkway, and if I show you a magnified view of the top left of the screen, again you can see that pattern of dots. Very worrying when I first saw it, and I was scratching my head for a while trying to work out what on earth was going on. So it's not, although I'm not saying there aren't marks on the sensor, I'm sure there are, this isn't that. This is light being bounced back off the silver foil in the body cap that I've used to make the pinhole. So I thought, well, in for a penny, in for a pound. I've decided I'm going to have a go, so let's try it properly. And the next thing I opted for was this, which, believe it or not, is marketed as a toy lens. It says so on the side. It's manufactured by SLR Magic, who I'm sure some of you will know if you're into your pinhole photography. And this is, although it says toy, it's a really good little bit of kit. All metal construction, just like the pinholes that I ordered from France, from Reality So Subtle. This one has a laser cut aperture right in the middle of a piece of brass. And this, I think, is round about 0.2 of a millimetre across, certainly no more than that. And unlike the DIY stuff that I've been doing, the other side of the toy lens is covered by a sheet of clear perspex, which is quite useful in one respect, because it means that nothing can get in through that admittedly very, very tiny hole. You're not going to get any dust going in through there. I think it's perspex as opposed to plastic. But as well as that, it is threaded for a 52mm filter. So if I wanted to, I could put a circular polarizer on this as well. And indeed, if I want even longer exposures, I could put a neutral density filter on as well. But the big difference here is that compared to the DIY body cap method, now this might just be a feature of trying to do pinhole photography on micro four thirds. For any aficionado of the discipline that is watching this, I'd love to get your feedback on it. The difference is that with my DIY body cap method, the pinhole itself is about 5mm further away from the sensor than it is on the SLR Magic version, on the professionally made version. That was the next thing. Take this out, have a go and see what difference I got with the images from this little devil. The images that you've seen already, by the way, in the main were taken with the EM1. The next ones that you're going to see a bit of a mixture, either with the EM1 or more likely the little Panasonic GF1. And I've been downtown this afternoon and just rattled off a few shots. I'm trying to educate my brain into good subjects. Now, this is Bold Street, Liverpool, looking up towards the bombed out church, St. Luke's bombed out church, which was damaged in the Blitz in 1940. This is probably my favourite shot to date, a cyclist, and the ISO on this is 1600, and the shutter speed was an eighth of a second, so I was panning the camera from left to right as the cyclist went by me, so I was trying to keep the cyclist as stationary in the frame as I could and let the background blur out. I'm very happy with that image. I'd be happy with that even if it was taken on a Leica Summicron lens. It's funny, I just like it. The bombed out church, the statues outside, I've really cranked up the sort of solarization side of it in this. And of course, sometimes, I think anyway, with pinhole photography, sometimes monochrome is better than colour. This is one of my favourite views in Princess Park, my local park, and the distant spire in the distance. This is on the SLR Magic pinhole lens. And this is the one on my little homemade version. So you can see if I swap between the two, there's a huge difference in coverage. The SLR Magic one, it equates to roughly 24mm field of view on a full frame camera. So that's the SLR Magic, and we'll just swap back again to the homemade version, which is roughly the same as a 50mm standard lens. Here again, Bold Street, the little lady was sat doing something with her mobile phone, I think, and people were just passing her by. Reeds and water, and I think with a number of these I quite like this sort of treatment, which makes it look more like a daguerreotype or tintype, calotype, any of the types going back to Victorian times. Relatively happy with that one too, and that's the original colour version. Liverpool 1, the bus station actually, and it's a reflection in one of the shop windows. The SLR Magic lens, as I mentioned already, the cover has a Perspex screen on it, if you like an ultraviolet filter. And as I mentioned, it's good from the point of view of stopping any dust from getting through the pinhole, but when you take a shot like this, looking directly into the sun, you do get that sort of pattern of diffraction. It flares very badly. The beauty of pinhole photography, of course, is that you've got zero distortion. There is no lens as such, just a tiny hole, so there is no distortion produced by the glass elements in a normal lens. And secondly, you've got fantastic, well, there isn't really depth of field. Everything is rendered as sharp as you can possibly get it, from, you know, ridiculously close to the camera right out to infinity. And that's just a byproduct of using pinholes. And the massive mistake that I made was to simply guess what size of pinhole I needed. A 1mm pinhole is way too wide. It was a real struggle for me, admittedly on bright sunny days to get a reasonable exposure. Very, very tricky. And that was my own mistake, my own fault, nothing to do with the people at Reality So Subtle. Am I happy with the SLR Magic lens? Yes, I don't think I can improve on it, which is very important. I like the wide 24mm angle of view. It's just that I'm going to have to recalibrate my old brain to think in terms of pinhole photography subjects and lighting conditions. I want to try some lighting, I want to try some compositions in bad weather and possibly even at night. Obviously, tripod use is pretty much essential. The images that you've seen were taken both on the EM1, which is filming this, and my little GF1. One thing you can say about this, it's not bulky. I hope you've enjoyed at least some of the images that I've shown you. I wouldn't classify any of them as keepers or folio entries. They're test shots, let's be honest. Don't go into pinhole photography if you're looking for razor sharp results, because you're never ever going to get them. You can get sharper results than I have, that's for sure, and I'm hoping I can improve on the results that I've shown you already as I get a little bit more experience, and if I do, I will share them with you. For now, I'm going to say look after yourselves, enjoy your photography, whether you're shooting through a tiny wee hole or through the world's most expensive lenses. Either way, it's a great hobby, a great pastime. Look after yourselves, and I'll see you very soon. Bye for now.